Most people think they know what made Cadillac the king of luxury in the 70s. You probably remember those massive land yachts floating down the highway, chrome gleaming, engines purring like satisfied cats. But what you didn't know is that hidden under those hoods was an engineering marvel so extreme, so over the top, that it remains unmatched in American automotive history. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 20 shocking secrets about the Cadillac 500 V8 that even die-hard car enthusiasts don't know, including one that proves this engine was so powerful it literally changed how car manufacturers rated horsepower forever. The largest passenger car engine America ever built. Here's something that'll blow your mind. The Cadillac 500 wasn't just big, it was the largest displacement engine ever sold in an American passenger car. We're talking 500 cubic inches, which translates to 8.2 liters of pure Detroit iron. To put that in perspective, that's bigger than most modern pickup truck engines, and this beast was designed for luxury cruisers. No other American manufacturer ever topped it for passenger car use. Not Chrysler with their legendary Hemis, not Ford with their massive 460, not even Chevy with their big blocks. When Cadillac decided to go big in 1970, they went all the way. The crazy thing was, they didn't build this monster for racing or hot rodding. They built it because Cadillac buyers demanded the smoothest, quietest, most effortless power delivery possible. And nothing delivers effortless power quite like massive displacement. This engine was so large that when you opened the hood of a 1970 Eldorado, there was barely room for anything else. The air cleaner practically touched the hood, and mechanics had to remove spark plugs at specific angles just to clear the shock towers. Started as an Eldorado exclusive. What's wild is that when Cadillac unveiled this mammoth engine in 1970, they didn't spread it across their whole lineup. The 500 was initially exclusive to one model, the Eldorado. Think about that for a second. Cadillac created the largest passenger car engine in American history and gave it to just one car. It was like they were testing the waters, seeing if America was ready for this level of excess. The Eldorado was already Cadillac's personal luxury flagship, competing with the Lincoln Mark III and other high-end coupes. By giving it exclusive access to the 500, Cadillac was making a statement. This is our crown jewel. The marketing department loved it. They could advertise the Eldorado as having something no other Cadillac offered, creating an even more exclusive aura around an already exclusive car. Dealers reported that customers would specifically ask for the one with the big engine, even though all Eldorados had it that first year. The exclusivity didn't last long, though. By 1975, Cadillac realized they were sitting on a gold mine and made the 500 available across most of their lineup. 400 horsepower from the factory rating that'll make your jaw drop. 400 horsepower. In 1970, Cadillac claimed their 500 V8 produced 400 horses, using the old SAE gross measurement. But here's where it gets interesting. That was actually a conservative estimate. Many who dyno tested these engines found they were underrated, possibly to avoid insurance problems or to keep a low profile during an era when the government was starting to eye high-performance cars suspiciously. The torque number was even more impressive, 550 pound-feet. That's semi-truck levels of twist, delivered smooth as silk through Cadillac's refined drivetrain. Remember, this was in a luxury car, not a muscle car. While Plymouth was shouting about their Hemis and Chevrolet was promoting their 454, Cadillac was quietly installing engines that could out-torque almost anything on the road. They just didn't brag about it the same way. The power delivery was unlike anything else too. Where muscle car engines were peaky and temperamental, the 500 delivered its power like a tidal wave, building smoothly from idle to redline without any flat spots or surges. Created by stretching the 472. The genius of Cadillac engineers really shows in how they created the 500. They didn't start from scratch or spend millions developing an entirely new engine. Instead, they took their existing 472 cubic inch V8 and figured out how to make it even bigger. The solution was elegantly simple: increase the stroke. They lengthened the stroke from 4.06 inches to 4.304 inches while keeping the bore at 4.3 inches. This longer stroke is what pushed displacement from 472 to 500 cubic inches. It's like they took an already massive engine and said, what if we just make the pistons travel a little farther? The beauty of this approach was that it allowed them to use much of the same tooling and many of the same parts. The block casting was similar, the heads were essentially the same, and even many internal components were shared. This made the 500 relatively affordable to produce, despite its exotic displacement. Hot rodders loved this fact because it means many parts interchange between the 472 and 500, making both engines easier to build and modify. Powered a front-wheel drive layout. Now here's something that'll really twist your brain. This massive 500 cubic inch engine powered the front wheels. Let that sink in for a moment. In the Eldorado, Cadillac somehow figured out how to package the largest passenger car engine ever made in a front-wheel drive configuration. This wasn't your typical transverse mount like modern cars either. The engine sat longitudinally, connected to a special transmission called the TH425. This transmission was actually an engineering marvel in its own right. It used a chain drive system to transfer power from the torque converter to the transmission itself, which sat alongside the engine rather than behind it. The whole setup was incredibly complex and required precision engineering to handle the 500's massive torque. Imagine the engineering meetings where someone said, "Let's take our biggest engine ever and make it pull the car instead of push it." It sounds insane, but it worked brilliantly. The front-wheel drive gave the Eldorado incredible traction in snow and rain, something luxury car buyers in northern states absolutely loved. Plus, it allowed for a completely flat rear floor with no drive shaft tunnel, increasing passenger comfort. If you thought that was impressive, wait until you see what's coming up. A secret about this engine's weight that defied all logic: Cadillac's experiment with space-age fuel injection that almost nobody knows about, and an emission story that changed everything. So let's continue. Became standard across Cadillac by 1975. By 1975, Cadillac executives realized they'd been too conservative. Why limit their masterpiece engine to just the Eldorado? That year, they made a bold decision. The 500 would become standard equipment across nearly the entire Cadillac lineup. The only exception was a new compact Seville, which used a modified Oldsmobile engine. Suddenly, whether you bought a Coupe de Ville, Sedan de Ville, Fleetwood Brougham, or Eldorado, you got 500 cubic inches of American excess under the hood. This move was pure genius from a marketing standpoint. Cadillac could now advertise that every full-size model came with the largest engine in the luxury car market. Lincoln was still using their 460, and Chrysler's Imperial was gasping its last breath with the 440. Cadillac stood alone at the top of the displacement mountain. Dealers reported that customers loved being able to say their Cadillac had the 500. It became a status symbol, a conversation starter at the country club. Even people who didn't know anything about cars understood that 500 was bigger than 460 or 440. Featured rare electronic fuel injection option. Here's a secret that even most Cadillac enthusiasts don't know. In 1975 and 76, you could order your 500 with Bendix electronic fuel injection. This wasn't some primitive throttle body setup either. We're talking about a sophisticated port fuel injection system with individual injectors for each cylinder, decades before fuel injection became common. The system was incredibly advanced for its time, using an analog computer to calculate fuel delivery based on multiple sensors. It monitored coolant temperature, manifold pressure, throttle position, and engine speed to optimize the fuel mixture. The result was better cold starting, smoother operation, and slightly more power. About 215 net horsepower versus 190 for the carbureted version. But here's the kicker. Almost nobody ordered it. The option cost an astronomical $900 extra, which is about $5,000 in today's money. Plus, most mechanics had no idea how to work on it. When something went wrong, dealers often just replaced the entire system with a traditional carburetor. Today, finding a 500 with working factory fuel injection is like finding a unicorn. Most were converted to carburetors long ago. Emissions strangled power to 190 horsepower. The tragedy of the 500 is what happened to its power output. Remember that 400 horsepower rating from 1970? By 1975, the same basic engine was rated at just 190 horsepower. That's a loss of over 200 horses in just 5 years. But wait, it gets more complicated. Part of this drop was due to the switch from gross to net horsepower ratings. Gross ratings measured the engine on a stand with no accessories, open exhaust, and optimal timing. Net ratings measured the engine as installed in the car with all accessories, full exhaust, and emissions controls. So some of the loss was just more honest measurement. The real culprit was compression ratio and emissions equipment. The 1970 engine ran 10-to-1 compression. By 1971, that dropped to 8.5-to-1 to accommodate unleaded fuel. Add in EGR valves, air pumps, catalytic converters, and retarded timing, and you got a recipe for power loss. The engine that once thundered was now wheezing. It still had the torque to move those massive Cadillacs, but the effortless acceleration was gone. Weighed less than you'd think. You'd assume an 8.2-liter engine would weigh as much as a small planet. But Cadillac engineers pulled off something remarkable. The complete 500 engine tipped the scales at roughly 600 to 680 pounds, depending on accessories. That's actually lighter than many smaller displacement big blocks from other manufacturers. How did they do it? Thin wall casting technology. Cadillac used advanced foundry techniques to create cylinder walls and other components that were strong but not unnecessarily thick. They analyzed every component for weight savings without compromising durability. The intake manifold was aluminum rather than iron. Even the exhaust manifolds were designed to be lighter while still flowing well. Hot Rod magazine once called it the most cubes for the fewest pounds when comparing it to Chevy big blocks. A Chevy 454 often weighed more despite having 46 fewer cubic inches. This weight efficiency meant the 500 didn't completely destroy the Eldorado's front weight bias, helping maintain reasonable handling for such a large car. It's another example of Cadillac engineering that often goes unappreciated. Peak torque at just 3,000 RPM. The 500's party trick was how it delivered its massive torque. Peak torque of 550 pound-feet arrived at just 3,000 RPM in early versions. The fuel-injected models were even more impressive, delivering 400 pound-feet at just 2,000 RPM. This meant you barely had to touch the throttle to get moving. At a stoplight, just breathing on the gas pedal would surge the car forward with authority. Merging onto highways required just a gentle squeeze. The engine never felt stressed or strained, just utterly relaxed as it propelled 4,500 pounds of luxury down the road. This low-end torque delivery was exactly what Cadillac buyers wanted. They didn't care about screaming to 7,000 RPM or doing burnouts. They wanted silent, seamless acceleration that made them feel like they were piloting a yacht rather than driving a car. The 500 delivered this better than any engine before or since. Mechanics who worked on these engines often remarked how different they felt from typical performance engines. Where a muscle car engine wanted to rev and scream, the 500 just wanted to loaf along at 1,500 RPM, barely above idle. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to own one of these magnificent engines? The stories from original owners are fascinating. Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced the smooth surge of a 500-powered Cadillac. or if your family had one back in the day. Killed by downsizing in 1977. The death of the 500 came suddenly in 1977. GM's massive downsizing program meant all full-size cars had to shrink, and the 500 simply wouldn't fit in the new, smaller Cadillacs. Just like that, America's largest passenger car engine was gone. The replacement was a 425 cubic inch engine that was actually a D-board version of the 500. It was a good engine, but it wasn't the same. The magic of being able to say your car had 500 cubic inches was gone. The downsized Cadillacs were actually better cars in many ways. More fuel efficient, easier to park, better handling. But something was lost in the transition. The excess, the absurdity, the sheer American audacity of putting an 8.2-liter engine in a luxury car would never be repeated. Cadillac tried to put a positive spin on it, emphasizing the new car's improved fuel economy and modern design. But enthusiasts mourned the loss of the 500. It represented the end of an era when bigger was always better, and fuel economy was an afterthought. Shared architecture with the 472. One of the smartest things Cadillac did was design the 500 to share most of its architecture with the 472. This wasn't just about saving money on tooling. It created a parts interchange bonanza that hot rodders still take advantage of today. Cylinder heads, intake manifolds, valve covers, oil pans, and dozens of other components swap directly between the two engines. This means if you're building a 472 and want more displacement, you can often just swap in a 500 crank and pistons. Conversely, if you need parts for a 500, you can often use 472 components. This interchangeability extends to modern performance parts too. Many aftermarket companies make parts that fit both engines, increasing the selection available to builders. Want a lumpy cam for your 500? There are options. Need aluminum heads? They're available. The shared architecture also meant Cadillac mechanics only had to learn one basic engine family. Whether a customer rolled in with a 472 or 500, the diagnostic procedures and repair techniques were largely the same. Compression dropped from 10 to 8.5 to 1. The compression ratio story of the 500 perfectly illustrates the challenges facing Detroit in the early 70s. The 1970 model started with a healthy 10-to-1 compression ratio, perfect for making power with the high-octane fuel of the era. But change was coming fast. By 1971, just one model year later, compression dropped to 8.5 to 1. Why such a dramatic change? Unleaded fuel was coming, and it couldn't support high compression without detonation. The government mandated that all cars be able to run on regular unleaded by 1975, so manufacturers had to plan ahead. This compression drop hurt power significantly. High compression is one of the easiest ways to make horsepower, and losing 1.5 points of compression was like taking a baseball bat to the engine's kneecaps. Combined with other emissions controls, it transformed the 500 from a tiger to a pussycat. Modern builders often reverse this change, installing high-compression pistons to wake these engines up. With modern fuel and engine management, it's possible to run higher compression than Cadillac ever did from the factory. Commercial chassis got fuel injection too. Here's something almost nobody knows. If you wanted a fuel-injected 500 in 1975 or 76, you didn't have to buy a regular Cadillac. The commercial chassis versions, used for hearses and ambulances, could also be ordered with electronic fuel injection. This made perfect sense when you think about it. Funeral directors and ambulance services needed maximum reliability. The last thing they wanted was a carburetor acting up during a funeral procession or emergency run. Fuel injection promised better cold starts and more consistent operation. These commercial chassis were already special orders with unique features like heavy-duty cooling systems and upgraded electrical systems. Adding fuel injection to the option list was natural. Many of these vehicles led easy lives too, accumulating low mileage while being meticulously maintained. Today, finding a funeral coach or ambulance with a fuel-injected 500 is the holy grail for some collectors. They represent the ultimate expression of Cadillac engineering from the era. Magazine builds exceeded 514 cubic inches. The hot rod community didn't take long to discover the 500's potential. By the 80s, magazine project cars were pushing these engines well beyond their factory displacement. 514 cubic inches became almost common, with some builders going even further. How do you add cubic inches to an already massive engine? Bore it out and stroke it even more. The 500's block had enough meat in the cylinder walls to safely bore 30 or 60 thousandths over. Combined with aftermarket stroker cranks, displacement could grow significantly. These builds weren't just about bragging rights. A 514-inch Cadillac could produce torque numbers that would make diesel trucks jealous. We're talking 600, 700, even 800 pound-feet with the right combination of parts. The best part was how streetable these engines remained. Unlike a high-strung race engine, a built Cadillac big block was perfectly happy idling in traffic or cruising at highway speeds. It just happened to have enough torque to pull tree stumps when called upon. Manual transmission swaps became popular. The idea of a manual transmission behind a Cadillac engine might seem sacrilegious, but hot rodders love breaking rules. Adapters became available to bolt truck 4 speeds like the SM420 and SM465 behind 472 and 500 engines. Why would anyone want to shift gears in a Cadillac engine? Control and durability. In heavy vehicles like old trucks or four-wheel drives, a manual transmission could handle the 500's torque better than some automatics. Plus, being able to select exactly the right gear for climbing hills or pulling loads was valuable. The swap wasn't simple. The 500's massive torque required heavy-duty clutch components, and the bell housing adapter had to be precisely machined. But once installed, the combination of Cadillac torque and manual gear selection was intoxicating. Some street rod builders also used manual transmissions for a different reason. They wanted something unique. In a world of small block Chevys with automatics, a Cadillac big block with a 4-speed stood out at car shows. No front driver ever matched its torque. Here's a record that still stands today. No front-wheel drive production car has ever matched the 1970 Eldorados' 550 pound-feet of torque. Think about that. In over 50 years of automotive development, with all our modern technology and turbocharging, nobody has put that much twist through the front wheels of a production car. Modern high-performance front drivers like the Honda Civic Type R or Ford Focus RS make impressive horsepower, but they're nowhere near 550 pound-feet. Even with sophisticated limited slip differentials and electronic torque management, that much torque would simply overwhelm front tires. Cadillac pulled it off with 1970s technology. No computers, no traction control, just good engineering and massive tires. The Eldorado's front-wheel drive system was overbuilt to handle the torque, with chain drives and heavy-duty components throughout. It's a testament to how over-the-top the whole concept was. Cadillac essentially said, let's do something nobody else would even attempt, and made it work for 7 model years. Power drop was partly measurement change. Understanding the 500's power loss requires a lesson in horsepower measurement. The 400 horsepower rating in 1970 used the SAE gross standard. By 1972, everyone had switched to SAE net ratings. The difference was huge. Gross ratings were fantasy numbers measured with the engine on a stand, no accessories, open exhaust, and optimal everything. Net ratings measured the engine as installed, with all accessories running, full exhaust system, and real-world conditions. It's like measuring someone's height in platform shoes versus barefoot. Same engine, different number. Experts estimate the gross-to-net conversion alone accounted for about a 20 to 25% difference, so that 400 gross horsepower was probably about 300 to 320 net, even without any actual changes. Add in the compression drop and emissions equipment, and you understand why the numbers fell so dramatically. The engine was still strong, just measured more honestly and saddled with pollution controls. Swappers love them today. In today's hot rod scene, Cadillac 500s have developed a cult following. They're different, they're torquey, and they're still relatively affordable compared to more popular engines. Plus, dropping a Cadillac engine in your hot rod is a great conversation starter. The swap possibilities are endless. Traditional hot rods, muscle cars, trucks, even boats. If it needs torque, a 500 is a candidate. The engine's smooth power delivery makes it perfect for cruising, while the massive displacement provides plenty of grunt for acceleration. Parts availability has actually improved in recent years. Aftermarket companies now make aluminum heads, intake manifolds, camshafts, and other performance parts specifically for Cadillac big blocks. You can build anything from a stock restoration to a 1,000-horsepower monster. The best part is the element of surprise. Nobody expects a Cadillac engine at a drag strip or car show. When you pop the hood and reveal that massive air cleaner with 500 emblazoned on top, people take notice. And the surprise secret I promised you at the beginning is, the 500's development actually started as a marine engine project. Cadillac engineers were originally tasked with creating a large displacement V8 for Chris Craft boats, which needed smooth, high-torque power plants for their luxury yachts. When that project was canceled, Cadillac already had the tooling and designs ready, so they adapted it for automotive use. This explains why the engine was so overbuilt and why it delivered such smooth, unstressed power. It was originally designed to run at constant speeds for hours in a marine environment. Final year, Eldorados still offered EFI. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, the absolute most shocking secret about the Cadillac 500. The 1976 Eldorado convertible was not just the last year for the 500, it was the last American convertible anyone thought would ever be built. Federal safety regulations were expected to ban convertibles entirely starting in 1977. Cadillac marketed these final Eldorados as the last convertible in America, and people went crazy. Production was supposed to be limited, but demand was so high that Cadillac built over 14,000 of them. Buyers paid thousands over sticker price, convinced they were purchasing rolling history. Many were immediately stored away as investments. The irony? The convertible ban never happened. By 1983, Chrysler was building LeBaron convertibles, and by the mid-'80s, everyone was back in the drop-top business. Those last convertibles that people hoarded, babied, and preserved, they became a reminder that sometimes the end isn't really the end. But for the 500 engine, 1976 truly was the finale. When those last Eldorado convertibles rolled off the assembly line with their optional fuel-injected 500s, they marked the end of an era that Detroit would never see again. That's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button so you don't miss the next one. See you there.